Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to discuss how there's talk of just how short Kemi Badenoch's shelf life is after a dismal start to her leadership, and the warning signs on full display. Exactly how long will Conservatives wait? Would they even move by the end of this year? But first, for daily political commentary, please hit the subscribe button so you stay notified. So earlier this week on LBC, James O'Brien was speaking with the political editor of the station, Natasha Clark, about Kemi Badenoch's, leadership. Clark has worked for some Tory papers in the past, so she will be well connected with what the Conservative Party are privately saying, even if they're not prepared to be too public just yet. There's certainly no great agitation on public display about Badenoch's performances. Obviously, the Tories need some stability at the moment. They can't keep chopping and changing leader every few months. The public will never believe that they're stable enough to govern again if they do. But a lot of Conservatives never thought Badenoch was a credible choice for leader in the first place. Not because of her politics not aligning strongly enough with their own. That's the usual source of friction within a political party. No, because of her attitude. As one Conservative MP anonymously put it last year, she could start a fight in an empty room. But O'Brien touched on something I've repeated a bit myself. Badenoch, like Sunak before her, thinks she's the finished article. She already thinks she's ready to lead, despite having very little leadership experience in any context. And it shows in her inability to learn lessons. If you recognise something's wrong, you can get to work putting it right. Now, you might still get it wrong, but eventually you'll learn, you'll put the right solution in place, you'll get stronger. But if you don't think you're making mistakes, you'll never improve, because improvement tends to require a conscious effort, and you won't make that effort if you don't think you're doing anything wrong. And it was interesting to hear Clark remarking on how Badenoch said it would take 2 years for her policy platform to form, but she didn't think Conservative MPs would give her that long. Which is interesting, because in general, there's no reason not to give the new leader 2 or 3 years. If they don't work out, that still gives you time to change them and give the new one a decent run up to the following election, which is going to be May 2028 at the very earliest. Could be a year later. And in many ways, Badenoch's attitude of let's take a couple of years to get this policy platform right is not a bad idea, if you can be sure of being given the time by your party. So what's the rush to get rid of her? Well, you would only rush to change leader in the first half of a parliament if you believe they weren't just not preparing you for the election, but if you thought they were actively making things worse, taking you backwards. And, well, there's an argument that Badenoch is. Take just 3 highlights from this week alone. People have been saying that her PMQs this last week was her best yet. That's a low bar, but it's a bit tragic that people think this. The most memorable exchange of PMQs between Badenoch and Starmer was when she criticised Labour's schools bill for inadvertently putting a sort of ceiling on teachers' pay, which would have had the effect of arguably reducing pay for teachers in some cases. Now, that would be a pretty good line. Except, of course, it had already been pointed out and Labour had already amended the legislation. So Badenoch was criticising proposed legislation that at the time she did so didn't exist. And Starmer wasted no time in pointing out how little attention she was paying to what's going on in Parliament. And that was her best ever performance, was it? Jesus wept. The second highlight was Kemi Badenoch attacking Labour for saying that they had concerns about the way the Prevent scheme could be alienating some communities in the way it's currently being implemented. Only Kemi Badenoch herself authored a report a few years ago saying exactly the same thing. It's not the first time that Badenoch has been caught attacking Labour for taking a line that she agrees with, like means testing the winter fuel payments, for example. She agrees with that. She's spoken in favour of that in the past. She just keeps exposing the fact that everything she says, she's saying to score cheap political points, not in order to form a coherent policy platform. And the third little highlight was the report that Badenoch had apparently told her shadow cabinet that she wanted Liz Truss to shut up for a while. Now, every Conservative should want her to shut up, I'm sure. She's only helping Labour with her deranged interventions at the moment. But if Badenoch is bringing her up in shadow cabinet meetings, is that a sign that she's feeling the pressure and looking for some external force to blame, rather than focusing on her own agency? After all, she can't control Liz Truss's mouth. She can control her own. And this was just how Badenoch was being reported in the last week. She's a disaster for the Conservatives. The only reason she's not crashing and burning like Truss herself is because she's in opposition. So she announces something mad, it doesn't cause the pound to crash. It's safe. But any Tory MPs who don't think Badenoch, or they never thought Badenoch would be suitable, they will feel utterly vindicated now. And any who weren't sure, they must now be seeing that she's not just not fit for the job. I mean, that's not an immediate barrier because there's a few years to go. But because of her arrogance, she won't actually get any better. They must surely know she can't lead them into the next election. So what factors are likely to determine her shelf life now? Well, just as with the last few Tory leaders, a big factor will be the replacement. Is there anyone who would definitely be better? The reason Boris Johnson hung on for so long is because people kept saying, well, who are you going to go? Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak? Good one. You know, they had to get rid of Liz Truss quickly, so there was no issue there. But Rishi Sunak, I mean, you know, it was quite obvious after him being in place for 6 months, similar to Badenoch, that he wasn't going to cut the mustard either. And yet they couldn't get rid of him because who did they have? They had no one. So is there anyone definitely better? They surely don't want another hat trick of leaders. They must think to themselves, if they replace Badenoch, the one they replace her with has to be the one that leads them into the next election. Has to be. And that could buy Badenoch time, because the choice at the moment is likely to be quite polarised. There's no central figure that everyone will get behind. Unless someone else emerges in the next year or so, the likely options are James Cleverly and Robert Jenrick. Now, if enough MPs think that either one of them could actually be worse than Badenoch, and I think Jenrick would be worse, they may give Badenoch more time and hope someone else makes a name for themselves. Though I have to say, I'm not seeing anyone emerging. Are you? Another factor will be the polling. Reform UK are now polling ahead of the Conservatives with YouGov. Although if you average it out across all pollsters, I think the Conservatives are just slightly ahead still. All sorts of things could happen this year. It's going to be crazy. But if Reform UK are seen to be polling ahead of the Conservatives and on a consistent basis, Badenoch can't survive. Even polling a little ahead of Reform UK isn't good enough for them. Labour can fix their poll rating by making sure their plans deliver. They have agency over that. The Tories have got no such agency. They can no longer prove themselves in practical terms. All they have is the power of persuasion now. Trust us, we've learned our lessons honest. If they cannot demonstrate that they are much more persuasive than Reform UK, they are sunk. And when Badenoch is being caught out on an almost weekly basis for attacking Labour for something she has said in the past, she looks like a political agitator, not a candidate for serious Prime Minister. And refusing to announce any policies, that is hazardous for her. Like I said, it's understandable to leave some policies in a vague state because events could change them, and sometimes it's better to not announce a policy than to announce one and then a couple of years later be accused of a U-turn when you have to change it. But there must be some platform policies she can lead with that she's fairly confident will stand the test of time. Right now, she has none. She has some half-baked policies. She says she would cut VAT on school fees again, but she hasn't said how she will pay for it. The same applies to a few other tax and spend policies as well. But she doesn't have a single policy that has been fully formed. Until she does, why should the public think about voting Conservative again? She's not making an offer to them. She's saying, I'll make my offer in 2 years' time. So she's not making it right now. So the public, they're not going to think about voting Conservative again because Badenoch is not offering them anything. So her party's poll rating is going to continue to be roughly as low as it is now, and therefore competing with Reform UK, who are announcing policies. They're fantasy policies, of course, but they're policies which have been announced with very little critical evaluation in the media. Basically, Badenoch has set herself on a course which means she can't possibly be improving her party's poll rating significantly until 2027 at least. And yet it appears Conservative MPs don't think she should be given that long. And because she refuses to acknowledge that she may be making mistakes, she won't adapt her strategy to the realities of the situation. She'll carry on and then look shocked when she gets the tap on the shoulder. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe for further content. If you'd like to support the channel further, you can click the join button for memberships. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.